Joining me now, Democratic strategist and former advisor to the Obama campaign, Amisha Cross, and Brendan Buck, MSNBC political analyst and former press secretary to House Speaker John Boehner. As I welcome you both, Amisha, first to you, because Pam Bondi is objectively far more qualified than Matt Gaetz, but does that make her more dangerous?
It absolutely does. She knows what she's doing. At the end of the day, she is a Trump bona fide, but she's also someone who will carry out his mission of retribution. She's someone who is willing to go against the law of the land. She's someone who's willing to go against even her own better judgment. We watched her go from a very strong legal mind to somebody who jumped on the election fraud scams, quite frankly, because it benefited her. It benefited her in fundraising. It benefited her in getting her name and lights across Fox News and other conservative networks, and it got her closer to the Trump inner circle. This is someone who will do whatever it takes to maintain that closeness to President-elect Trump. And I think that that's dangerous because we already know what Donald Trump wants to do when it comes to reshaping the DOJ, not only within his image, but also to carry out his retributive efforts against multiple entities, other forms of government, as well as the press.
So, Brendan, will Pam Bondi's confirmation, will that slide through, especially if seen in comparison to Matt Gaetz's? And does Gaetz's implosion, does that hurt Trump politically at all?
Well, I think Trump's benefited from the fact that Matt Gaetz didn't last much more than a week. Usually a nomination that fails drags out there for a long time and it becomes a long, painful story, and that's why they eventually drop out. I think Matt Gaetz saw the writing on the wall very quickly, and that actually is certainly to Trump's benefit. Pam Bondi, is certainly well positioned to be confirmed. She is definitely not as dangerous as Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is not a dunce. He is a smart, shrewd operator, but also highly, almost singularly immoral, and Pam Bondi is not. Pam Bondi is a conventional GOP figure these days. She is a team player. So she's going to want to do whatever the team wants to do. She was a surrogate for Mitt Romney in 2012. She jumped to Donald Trump. She wants to be in good graces with the team. So, yeah, she may still pursue a lot of the same vindictive type of things that Donald Trump is looking for. But she will present much better in a confirmation, and I imagine she'll have a much better chance of getting through.
Here's the question to you, though, Brendan. Isn't it Team America, not Team Trump, for the position of Attorney General? It's supposed to be nonpartisan.
Absolutely, of course. But nobody that Donald Trump is going to nominate is not going to be on his team, for sure. Look, at the same time, the conversation around these nominations sometimes looks odd. We talk so much about loyalty, and I think we know what Donald Trump's team means when they say loyalty. At the same time, we should not expect somebody to come in and be antagonistic to the sitting president, the president who nominates them. So, look, Pam Bondi is about as good as it's going to get for Attorney General in a Donald Trump administration. She is a real qualified person who knows what she's doing. And I think, probably not my pick, but certainly someone that we can have a little less fear about from than Matt Gaetz, who was literally going to be there just to cut off people's heads at the department. And wreak havoc. I don't think that's going to be her priority.
Okay. Let's move on with you, Amisha, to Trump, who has picked Russell Vought, the co-author of Project 2025, by the way, to lead the budget office known as the OMB. This despite the fact that Trump and his team tried to distance themselves from Project 2025 during the campaign. Now they're appointing several contributors to the administration. Vought was also briefly OMB director under Trump in 2020, but none of this is surprising. Does it indicate to you, though, how much more methodical they plan to be this time around in executing their promises?
Absolutely. Donald Trump is a lot smarter in 2024 than he was in 2016. And I think that, aligning himself with the Heritage Foundation, which is a long sought after conservative think tank that has pushed a lot of these legislative plans within state legislatures across the country already. Be mindful, Project 2025, though it has a federal bent, a lot of this has been tested in several conservative states. With that being said, Donald Trump recognizes that he needed more help to get across the type of agenda and plan setting that would create seismic shifts in America, the type of help that he didn't have in 2016, the type of individuals in place who understand policy, who understand how to get things across the aisle. That's what he's employing here. This is someone who lied about not knowing what Project 2025 is or the authors or anything like that. We see him appointing them left and right, and the ones he's not appointing, he's using as advisors. This is a guy who basically went out of his way to have these people be his brain trust. That is who they are. And he is going to utilize them to execute an America that does not look like how our Constitution was designed. And we've seen it. The good thing about this, I think, is that the playbook is here. Everybody can read it. It's readily available. There's no reason to believe that he will not utilize it as the text is written. And with that being said, that means that advocacy groups, that means that lawyers, that means that the community needs to really buckle up and lean in on this, because there is going to be no stopping him. And they're currently working to remove the very safeguards that prevented a lot of his overreach in his 2016 campaign and 2016 presidency.
Brendan, I'm curious, you want to respond to that? I mean, just the use of Project 2025 as really a guidebook, a handbook, the textbook for the incoming Trump administration and what they plan to do and the appointments they're making?
Look, I'll be honest. I think we got to drop the Project 2025 stuff. I've always found it to be absurd and ridiculous. Think tanks put out agendas like this every 4 years. The Heritage Foundation has put out plans like this all the time. Republicans do this. There's nothing in there that is any different than Republicans have been talking about for decades. This was a political play by Democrats to try to make something sound scary. There's nothing scary about it. I mean, you may not like what Republicans think, but there's nothing scary about it. And it just failed as a political tool. It just simply did. I think we need to just drop this. Donald Trump is going to set his own agenda. Sure, Russ Vought cares a lot about the things that are in there, but he cared about them long before Project 2025 came along. He's not back in the administration because he wrote Project 2025. He's back in the administration because he was already the OMB director. I just think the entire conversation is silly. I've been seeing these things on paper for literally years and years and years. There's nothing to this beyond what every Republican has long talked about.
Okay, I respect that position, but then let me pivot back to you, Amisha. Is there something in Project 2025 that you do find scary? Just one thing.
The idea of a unitary executive. I think that it is very problematic to see a government that erodes the checks and balances that are there to make sure that a president is not seen as a king or is turned immediately into an authoritarian. The very basis of Project 2025 is based on a unitary executive. That is not how democracy works. That is not how our Constitution or our government was originally set up. That is also not something that the Republican Party has long held to be true or the value.
Yes, it is. That is a fundamental constitutional foundation, that the president is the head of the executive. What unitary executive means is the president is the head of the executive branch, and that a bunch of different agencies do not get to operate independently. That is not controversial. That has been the Republican view and an American view for 200 years. And people try to make this out into this scary idea. All it says is that you shouldn't have other agencies be able to be unaccountable to the president. The president is in charge. He is democratically elected. That's the most democratic thing that you can have. So that is not a new idea. It's been Republican mantra for decades or hundreds of years.
But look, Donald Trump is not your typical Republican president. Is that what you're taking offense at, or that you have fear around, Amisha?
Absolutely. The definition of unitary executive, he is absolutely correct on. The way that Donald Trump sees it and the way that the people he'd align himself with is seeing it is not that definition. And I think that that's the problem. Operating as though Donald Trump is Ronald Reagan, operating as though he is George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, operating as though he is any of the previous Republican presidents, I think is completely ignorant. It is asinine, and it is out of lockstep with the way that Donald Trump has conducted himself and the plans that he has spoken about.
Okay, so last word to you, Brendan, on that point, the fact that Donald Trump is none of those Republican presidents that Amisha just named.
Sure. I thought he was a terrible president. I've never supported him. I don't disagree, but that doesn't change the fact that our government is set up in a certain way. But more back to the point, Project 2025, yes, talks about how the president should be head of the executive branch. That's not a new idea. A lot of the hyperbole around Project 2025 is about things that are likely never going to happen. They will talk a lot about, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education. I promise you in 4 years, there will still be a Department of Education. A lot of this stuff is just overblown hyperbole.
It's the erosion
Donald Trump
of
is
the
not going to be able to
education.
do a lot of these things, and I wish we could just move on from this conversation.
Okay, well, I'm marking November 23rd as having said that. We're going to hold you to it. I can't promise we're not going to talk about 2025 again with you, Brendan, but I do hope you're going to come back.
Fair
and
enough.
Amisha, you too as well. Thank you both.